Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us your sources, and, well, our job is pretty simple. Dig out the key insights, the surprising stuff, the things that make you really think.
Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely clued in.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at excerpts from a really foundational text.
That's right, the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah. But we're not aiming for, a dry history lecture here.
No, definitely not.
The goal is to get right to the core ideas, find what still hits home today, what offers a fresh angle for you, especially if you want that understanding without wading through everything yourself.
So where do we start with something so ancient, so profound?
Good question. The text itself kind of throws you in the deep end, doesn't it?
It really does. It opens by telling us that the Tao you can put into words,
Yeah.
well, that's not the real enduring Tao. Same for the name, if you can name it, it's not the eternal name.
So right away, it's pointing beyond language, or like trying to describe, I don't know, the taste of water. You know it, but the words.
Exactly. Words fall short. And from that nameless beginning, it brings up this core pairing.
Okay.
Non-existence that's the source of heaven and earth, and then existence that's the mother of everything we see.
Non-existence first, then existence.
But here's the really deep part. They come from the same place. There's a fundamental unity beneath it all.
That idea of non-existence being the starting point, it's a real mind bender. It makes me think of silence and music, how the space makes the notes work.
That's a great analogy, actually. The text describes the Tao as like hollow or empty.
But not empty in a bad way.
No, not at all. It's empty but inexhaustible, like a well that never runs dry. It's the source of everything.
Invisible, untouchable.
Right,
Yeah.
intangible, but it contains the potential for all forms, all substance, all, essence.
So it's the potential behind everything, the thing that makes reality possible, even if we can't grab hold of it directly.
You've got it. And get this, it supposedly existed before heaven and earth.
Wow, okay.
It's described as motionless, fathomless, standing alone, never changing.
But everywhere at once.
Pervading everywhere, exactly. And never used up. Maybe the mother of the universe, the text suggests.
It feels like even the writers were struggling with words here. They mentioned having to force a name on it, calling it Tao.
They did. They needed a label, right, to talk about this fundamental, natural way things are. So Tao, and they called it supreme.
Supreme, implying movement.
Yeah, it suggests this cycle going far away and then returning, a kind of cosmic rhythm.
Okay, so we have this indescribable foundational Tao. How does that change how we see the world or how we should maybe live in it?
Well, it leads straight into this idea of interconnectedness, how things that seem like opposites are actually deeply linked.
Like good and evil, or light and dark.
Exactly. Chapter 2 spells it out. When everyone sees beauty as beautiful, ugliness suddenly exists. When good is seen as good, bad appears.
Ah, so you can't have one without the concept of the other. Like two sides of a coin.
Precisely. The text lists more pairs. Existence implies non-existence, easy defines difficult, long and short only makes sense in comparison to each other.
Our whole understanding is built on these relationships, these contrasts.
Yes. It's fundamental to how we perceive things.
So it's not just abstract philosophy. It's saying this is how reality is structured, this constant dance of opposites.
Absolutely. And chapter 18 takes it a step further. It connects this idea to when the great Tao, that original harmony, is lost.
Okay, what happens then?
That's when we start needing concepts like benevolence and righteousness. The very fact we have to talk about being good suggests we've drifted from a state where it was just natural.
Huh. Interesting. So focusing heavily on rules and morality might actually be a sign that things are already out of balance.
That's the implication, yeah. Same with wisdom and cleverness. They arise when maybe hypocrisy or artificiality creeps in.
So when things are truly aligned with Tao, there's just balance. No need for all these labels.
That seems to be the idea. The distinctions, the judgments, they come when we lose that original unity. Like, if everyone just naturally got along, you wouldn't need laws, right?
Makes sense. Okay, now how does this all relate to the figure of the sage? They seem pretty central in the Tao Te Ching.
The sage is basically the one who embodies these principles. They live the Tao. And a key part of that is acting without action, wu wei, and teaching without words.
Right, wu wei. That always sounds a bit passive, like just letting things happen.
It does sound that way, but it's not really about doing nothing. It's more like acting in tune with the natural flow.
How so?
Not forcing things, working with the current, not against it. Like a skilled surfer riding a wave instead of fighting it.
Okay, so it's skillful, subtle action.
Exactly. And teaching without words is similar. It's about leading by example, letting understanding dawn on people naturally, not just lecturing them.
Guiding gently, not shoving.
Got it. And the text gets specific about how a sage might govern. It talks about emptying minds, filling bellies, weakening ambitions, strengthening bones.
That sounds a little controlling, maybe. Emptying minds.
It can sound that way, but the interpretation is often about keeping people grounded in essentials, not letting them get carried away by excessive desires or confusing ideas that cause trouble. Focus on basic well-being.
Okay, so less about mind control, more about preventing distraction and satisfying fundamental needs.
That's a good way to put it. The sage avoids, praising certain people too much or making a big deal about rare, expensive things,
Why is that?
because that stuff breeds envy, greed, conflict. Showing off desirable things makes people want them and maybe compete unhealthily.
Right. Keep things simple. Avoid stirring up trouble.
Exactly. The sage stays detached, sort of like how the text says heaven and earth treat everything impartially, like straw dogs.
Straw dogs, that sounds dismissive.
It's not about value, it's about non-attachment. Straw dogs were used in rituals, then discarded without fuss. Heaven, earth, the sage, they don't cling or play favorites. They focus on the underlying Tao.
So it's about inner focus, not outer appearances.
Precisely. Inner cultivation over external show. And there's this paradox. The sage puts themselves last, but ends up first. Forgets themselves, but is preserved.
How did that work?
Because they're not driven by self-interest. By not chasing personal gain, they naturally align with the Tao and things just work out.
And that analogy about goodness being like water, that really clicked.
It's a powerful one, isn't it? Water helps everything, doesn't compete, flows to the low places everyone else avoids.
Yeah.
And the text links this to practical stuff. Live close to the earth, feel deeply, be kind in relationships, truthful in words, just in ruling, competent in business, timely in action.
And the core idea.
Avoid contention. Don't strive against things, then you avoid blame.
It paints a picture of the ideal person that's really different from our usual heroes. Subtle, reserved, hesitant, humble.
Yielding, simple, empty, obscure.
Yeah. It values inner depth, quiet wisdom, not loud displays of power.
This person can purify, calm things down, bring life, but without wanting credit for it.
Exactly. They're not trying to be full in the ego sense.
Yeah.
It's a totally different leadership model, too.
Completely. The text contrasts rulers. The best. People hardly know they exist.
Right.
Then come the ones people love and praise. Then the ones they fear. And the worst are the ones people despise.
So the ideal is almost invisible leadership, creating harmony so naturally it doesn't feel managed.
That's the goal. It relies on people's inherent trust, not force.
And humility keeps popping up.
Crucial. It's the source of wholeness. The sage shines without showing off, is noticed without seeking approval, achieves without boasting, excels without glory-seeking. They don't compete, so nobody competes with them.
There are those great lines, too. A good traveler leaves no tracks.
A good speaker makes no slips. A good reckoner needs no tally. It's about effortless mastery. Natural skill.
Yeah.
And the sage doesn't have their own fixed self, their own agenda. They make the people's well-being their own. They treat everyone with goodness and trust.
And that idea about decreasing learning to find the Tao.
Fascinating, isn't it? It's about unlearning, simplifying, getting rid of the clutter to reach that state of wu-wei, non-action.
Through which everything can be done. Another paradox.
Exactly. It's so different from our usual more is better approach to knowledge and effort.
It really is.
The text contrasts relaxed, natural governing, leading to happy people with fussy, interfering governing, which leads to dissatisfaction.
And those metaphors for the sage's way. Square without cutting, angled without piercing.
Straight without stretching, bright without dazzling, effective, but not harsh or overwhelming.
Like the advice.
Yeah.
Govern a big country like you cook a small fish.
Gently. Minimal handling. Don't mess with it too much. Rule by non-interference.
Because too many rules just cause problems.
That's the ultimate. More restrictions lead to poverty, more weapons to chaos, more cleverness to weird stuff, more laws to more thieves.
And the sage has 3 treasures.
Yes. Love or compassion, perhaps, moderation or frugality, and humility, not daring to be ahead of the world.
And these lead to
Courage, generosity, and true leadership. They sum up the sage's path.
It connects to those other paradoxes too, like the best soldier isn't aggressive.
Right. The best fighter isn't furious. The best conqueror avoids war. The best boss stays humble. It's all about the power of not contending. the ultimate strength.
This whole way of the sage offers such a different perspective. Now let's shift to another key idea, the value of emptiness, of non-being.
Yes, and this ties right back to that starting point, doesn't it? Non-existence as the origin.
It does feel connected, like it's explaining that initial mystery more.
Exactly. Chapter 11 gives these really concrete examples. Think of a wheel.
Okay,
Lots of spokes meeting at the hub, right? But it's the empty space in the middle where the axle goes.
that makes it work.
That's what makes it useful. Same with a clay pot. It's the empty space inside that holds things.
Or doors and windows in a house.
Precisely. They're empty spaces, but they make the house livable.
So the emptiness isn't just nothing, it's functional potential.
That's a perfect way to put it. The text says, while we get benefits from what is, we actually use what is not.
That really highlights how much we rely on absence, on space.
It's a deep interdependence. And chapter 40 hits it hard. Existence comes from non-existence. That's the origin of everything.
Wow, that's a fundamental statement about reality.
It is. The potential for everything lies in that emptiness, that void. And because of that, the text says, achieving a state of absolute emptiness or vacuity.
And keeping perfectly still inside.
Those are the goals. Quieting the mental noise.
Why is that stillness so important?
Because in that stillness, you can observe things arising and returning. Everything goes back to its root, its origin.
And that origin is stillness.
Stillness, peace, returning to destiny, the eternal. Knowing that cycle, that return, is enlightenment.
So embracing emptiness isn't about being negative. It's about seeing the fundamental pattern and finding peace in it. And potential.
Exactly. The empty space holds the possibility. Returning to it is returning to peace and deep understanding.
This definitely makes you rethink what's important.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to moderation and contentment. This feels like it flows naturally from avoiding extremes and finding that inner fullness.
It really does. Chapter 9 warns against pushing things too far, trying to keep something filled to the absolute brim.
Like sharpening a blade until it's too thin.
Exactly. It won't last. Same with clinging to wealth and status if it comes with pride. The text advises knowing when to step back after success. That's the Tao of heaven.
Know when enough is enough. Don't overdo it.
Precisely. And chapter 12 talks about how too much sensory input can be harmful.
Okay.
Too many colors blinding the eye, too many sounds deafening the ear, too many flavors dulling the taste, chasing rare things, constant desire. It messes you up.
So focus on needs, not just wants.
Yeah, provide for the stomach, not the eye. Focus on essentials, not superficial flashes.
Makes sense.
And chapter 13 links needing approval, favor, or disgrace to fear, and being too attached to your body, yourself, to fortune and disaster.
So if you detach a bit from your ego and needing praise,
You're freer from fear and the ups and downs of fortune. It even suggests loving the world like you love your own body.
wow, that's a high bar.
It is, but if you can do that, you can be entrusted with the world, you can govern it properly. It's about extending care outwards.
And it warns against showing off, right?
Yeah, standing on tiptoe, striding too wide, displaying yourself, approving yourself, praising yourself, glorying in yourself. All called excess. Things people dislike.
Just a constant call for balance, avoid extremes.
Absolutely. Too much love leads to waste. Too much hoarding leads to loss. Know contentment, avoid humiliation. Know when to stop, avoid danger.
He uses those strong images, too fast, horses hauling manure.
Or war horses bred everywhere when there's no Tao, no peace. It shows how desires get distorted. The text says the greatest crime is wanting more, the greatest misery is not knowing content.
But the contentment of knowing content is lasting contentment.
Exactly. It's an inner state that sustains itself.
What about seeing the small things?
Seeing the minute, the subtle, that's clarity. Keeping to the weak, the yielding, that's strength. Use your light, but dim the outward brightness to avoid causing trouble. That's following the eternal.
Quiet strength again, not needing to be flashy.
Right. And this idea of absolute equality, blunting sharpness, untying knots, softening glare, merging with the dust, being impervious to favor or rejection, benefit or harm, that's what's truly valuable.
These are stable, centered.
Exactly. And the sage uses moderation in everything, especially ruling. That leads to accumulating virtue, becoming unshakable, having deep roots, enduring long.
So moderation isn't weakness, it's a path to real strength and stability.
Precisely. And it ends that section with the observation about life and death.
Being soft when alive, hard when dead.
Yeah. Applies to people, plants, everything. Hardness, stiffness, that's the way of death. Softness, tenderness, flexibility, that's the way of life. So don't be too rigid.
Be adaptable. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's zero in on governance and leadership again, pulling together these Taoist principles.
Well, the foundation is still Wu Wei, non-action, governing without force.
And treating the world like your own body.
Yes, that idea of deep care and responsibility allows one to govern effectively. Knowing the eternal, that cyclical nature we talked about.
Leads to being all-embracing.
Magnanimous, omnipresent, aligned with Tao, and achieving lasting stability.
And we mentioned that hierarchy of rulers before.
Right. Best is unknown, then loved, then feared, then despised. The ideal is almost invisible influence, natural order.
How does stability relate to action?
Heaviness is the root of lightness. Calmness masters hastiness. Rulers need to be grounded, tranquil, not acting lightly or rushing impulsively.
And avoid using force.
Definitely. Assisting a ruler with Tao means not dominating the world with weapons. Aim for results, but don't boast, don't be proud, don't use force. Recognize that things pushed to their peak start to decline. That's against Tao. It won't last.
So let things develop naturally.
If rulers could stick to Tao's non-interference, things would develop naturally. Desires could be calmed by nameless simplicity, leading to peace and order.
It's about creating the right conditions, not forcing the outcome.
Exactly. And interestingly, the text says governing with less knowledge, less complexity is a blessing. More cleverness, more schemes, that's destructive. Knowing that difference is key.
Now, this is more in terms of governing.
In a way, yes. Simplicity and naturalness are valued. A great state is described like a low-lying stream, where everything converges. It conquers by being humble, by lowering itself.
So big states should be humble to attract people, small states humble to be accepted.
That's the idea. It fosters cooperation, not conflict. And leaders shouldn't make life too hard for people.
Don't squeeze them too tight.
Right. Don't make their homes too small, or their living too meager, or they'll just become dissatisfied and resentful.
And why do people suffer, according to the text?
People starve because taxes are too heavy. They're hard to rule because officials meddle too much. They disregard death because they're too focused on just desperately trying to live. It all comes back to leadership that's out of sync with the Tao.
It's a clear cause and effect. Misrule leads to suffering. Okay, finally, let's tackle those famous paradoxes. They really make you stop and think.
They're designed to do that, to break our usual ways of thinking, like be humble to stay whole, be bent to become straight.
Be empty to be full. Be worn out to be renewed. It feels backwards.
It does from a surface perspective, but it points to deeper truths, where apparent weakness holds strength. Like knowing the masculine, the strong, but keeping to the feminine, the receptive.
It makes you a channel for the world, returning to infancy, like pure potential.
Exactly. Or knowing brightness, but keeping to darkness, becoming a standard for the world, returning to the absolute Tao. Knowing honor, but staying humble, becoming a valley that receives everything, returning to wholeness.
So it's always about embracing the lesser aspect to gain something greater, more fundamental.
Precisely. And that principle of apparent loss leading to gain, you have to contract something to expand it later, weaken to strengthen, overthrow to exalt, give to take. It's called subtle wisdom.
And the soft overcomes the hard.
Like water wearing away rock. It's a core principle.
And those proverbs about the Tao itself, they're so striking.
They really are. Enlightenment seems obscure. Progress seems like going backwards. The highest virtue seems like an empty valley. The purest white seems tarnished.
It challenges our ideas of perfection and clarity.
Suggests true depth might look ordinary or even flawed on the surface.
Like the greatest perfection seems imperfect.
Fullness seems empty, straightness seems crooked, skill seems clumsy, eloquence seems like stammering. True mastery doesn't always look like we expect.
And for leaders, be above people by speaking as if below them. Lead by following behind.
It's leadership through humility and service, which earns genuine respect, not resentment. Because you're not competing with people, they don't feel weary of you.
And again, the weakest thing, water overcomes the strongest.
And that truth, that bearing reproach makes you a master, bearing calamities makes you a king. The world knows it, the text says.
But doesn't do it.
Often no. It's hard in practice.
Definitely easier said than done.
And it wraps up with perhaps the most famous paradox. Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know.
Implying true wisdom is beyond words.
Yes, along with similar ideas. True words aren't fancy, fancy words aren't true. Good people don't argue, those who argue aren't good. Wise people aren't learned in the academic sense, the learned aren't truly wise. It brings us back to the limits of language and the value of direct, intuitive knowing.
Wow. A perfect circle back to the beginning, where
Oh,
the Tao itself couldn't truly be spoken.
exactly.
Well, this has been quite the journey through the Tao Te Ching. Really
Yeah.
fascinating stuff. We've touched on the Tao's mystery, the dance of opposites, wu wei,
Yeah.
emptiness, moderation, leadership, and these mind-bending paradoxes.
And it's amazing how relevant these ancient ideas still feel, for personal life, for how we think about society, leadership, just navigating modern complexity.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you listening in. Given this emphasis on, let's say, non-forcing action, where in your life might you find more power, more effectiveness by actually doing less, by letting go of control a bit?
Or thinking about fullness coming from emptiness. What empty spaces, maybe quiet time, less busyness, could you cultivate to allow for more potential, more peace, more creativity, perhaps?
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for diving deep with us.